What's going on, everybody? Welcome all. Today we'll be reading Mark chapter 6. So I'm reading from the NLT translation, the New Living Translation. Also, as a reference, I'm using the Geneva Bible, the 1560 edition. This chapter is a little bit longer, so hopefully I'll try to keep it short. But let's go ahead without further ado and dive in. Mark chapter 6. Jesus rejected at Nazareth. Jesus left that part of the country and returned to with his disciples to Nazareth, his hometown. The next Sabbath he began teaching in the synagogues, and many who heard him were astonished. They asked, "Where did he get all his wisdom and the power to perform such miracles? He's just a carpenter, the son of Mary, and a brother of James, Joseph, Judas, and Simon, and his sisters live right here among us." They were deeply offended and refused to believe in him. Then Jesus told them, "A prophet is honored everywhere except in his own hometown, among his relatives, and in his own family." And because of their unbelief, he couldn't do any mighty miracles among them except to place his hands on a few sick people and heal them. And he was amazed at their unbelief. So one thing that I want to point out here is if anybody watching this that knew me 10 years ago and seeing this now, for one, they probably would be like, I know what that guy at least was all about, right? Like, this is pretty unbelievable. So don't be surprised of once you turn your life to Jesus and once he actually truly starts making changes in your life, that people around you are gonna be resistant to you, right? Whether it be your family, your friends, your friend groups that you used to hang out with, and things of that nature, because they're gonna be like, dude, I know that guy. Like, that's not who he is. Like, who does he think he is? But once he starts changing your life and you, so just don't be surprised when things like that do happen. Okay. Anyways, let's continue. Jesus sends out the 12 apostles. Then Jesus went out from the village to village, teaching. And he called his 12 disciples together and sent them out 2 by 2 with authority to cast out evil spirits. He told them, "Take nothing with them except a walking stick, no food, no traveler's bag, no money." He told them to wear sandals, but not to take even an extra coat. "When you enter each village, be a guest in only one home," he said. "And if a village won't welcome you or listen to you, shake off its dust from your feet as you leave. It is a sign that you have abandoned the village to its fate." Okay, so I want to pause there for a second. Let's go back here. So this is verse 11, right? So here in verse 11 it says, "And whoever shall not receive you nor hear you, where ye depart thence, shall of ye dust that is under your feet for a witness unto them." Sorry, this is like super old English. The S's look like F's. They didn't have a letter J yet, so they used I's and things of that nature. But here's what I wanted to point out. "Verily I say unto you, it shall be easier for Sodom and Gomorrah at the day of judgment than for that city." Right, so Sodom and Gomorrah, we'll learn about it more in the Old Testament, but those were 2 cities that were so full of sin, specifically sexual immorality sin, that God destroyed both of those cities entirely, right? So here it says that those cities that don't welcome you, that don't welcome the teaching, they'll be worse off than these 2 cities in the Old Testament. All right, let's continue. "So the disciples went out, telling all they met to turn from their sins, and they cast out many demons and healed many sick people, anointing them with olive oil." The death of John the Baptist. Again, John the Baptist, if you listen to any of my Matthew teachings, or not teaching, sorry, readings, you'll see that John the Baptist is actually Jesus' cousin. He was the prophet that was sent out before Christ to let people know, hey, Christ is coming, right? And we learned about him a little bit in the beginning of Mark, I believe. So here's the death of John the Baptist. "Herod Antipas, the king, soon heard about Jesus, because people everywhere were talking about him. Some were saying, 'This must be John the Baptist came back to life again. That is why he can do such miracles.' Others thought Jesus was an ancient prophet Elijah. Still others thought he was a prophet like the other great prophets of the past. When Herod heard about Jesus, he said, 'John, the man I beheaded, has come back from the dead.' For Herod has sent soldiers to arrest and imprison John as a favor to Herodias. She had been his brother Philip's wife. but Herod had married her. John kept telling Herod, "It is illegal for you to marry your brother's wife." Herodias was enraged and wanted John killed in revenge, but without Herod's approval, she was powerless. And Herod respected John, knowing that he was a good and holy man, so he kept him under his protection. Herod was disturbed whenever he talked with John, but even so, he liked to listen to him. Herodias' chance finally came. It was Herod's birthday, and he gave a party to his palace aides, army officers, and the leading citizens of Galilee. Then his daughter, also named Herodias. So here it says, then his daughter, but I believe from my understanding and the way that the older translation reads it, is it seems like it's actually Herodias' his wife's daughter, possibly either Philip's daughter, which Philip was Herod's brother, as we just read, or some other daughter, but not his actual biological daughter. So in here it says, but the time began convenient when Herod, on his birthday, made a banquet for his prince and captains and chief estates of Galilee. And the daughter of the same Herodias, so see here it says that the daughter of the same Herodias came in and danced. So here it's saying that it's Herod's daughter, but here it's saying that it's Herodias' daughter, right? And you'll kind of understand why I think that it's not necessarily his daughter, but his new wife's daughter instead, and his like adopted daughter. So then his daughter, also named Herodias, came in and performed a dance that greatly pleased them all. "Ask me for anything you like," the king said to the girl, "and I will give it to you." So from the context, we don't really know exactly what kind of a dance it was, but it seemed like it was kind of pretty provocative. All these people are, I mean, it's a party, I'm sure all these people are drinking and things of that nature. The king is drinking. So if it must have greatly pleased them all, must have been some sort of an erotic dance, something essential and things of that matter, to where he was too drunk and he's like, "I'll give you whatever you want." Like, everybody loved it. That's why I don't think it was his actual daughter. That's why I believe it was his stepdaughter, right? So then the king promises, "I will give you whatever you ask, up to half of my kingdom." She went out and asked her mother, "What should I ask for?" Her mother told her, "Ask for John the Baptist's head." Right? So it seems like, again, there's some sort stronger connection between the mother and the daughter compared to the king and, I believe, stepdaughter. So the girl hurried back to the king and told him, "I want the head of John the Baptist right now on a tray." Then the king was very sorry, but he was embarrassed to break his oath in front of his guests. So he sent an executioner to the prison to cut off John's head and bring it to him. The soldier beheaded John in the prison, brought his head on a tray and gave it to the girl, who took it to her mother. When John's disciples heard what happened, they came for his body and buried it in the tomb. Yeah, and so I know I've mentioned it several times throughout the book of Matthew, and then a couple of times I believe in the book of Mark, but oaths, especially in the older day, like truly had a lot of meaning. Like, you had to follow on your oath, right? That's why Jesus constantly teaches us to just let your yes be yes and your no be no. Don't be swearing up by the heaven. Don't be swearing by anything on earth. Don't be swearing on anything, because you don't have control over anything. Just allow your yes be yes and your no be no, right? And as you can see here, he promised her something. He gave her an oath, like, "I'll do whatever you want." And even though he really liked John the Baptist, however, he had to stay to his promise. All right, let's continue. Jesus feeds 5,000. The apostles returned to Jesus from their ministry tour and told him all they had done and what they had taught. Then Jesus said, "Let's get away from the crowd for a while and rest." There were so many people coming and going that Jesus and his apostles didn't even have time to eat. So kind of just want to point out, Jesus said, let's get away from the crowds for a little while and rest, right? So these guys were working constantly. He sent them out 2 by 2 to go do all the preaching and things. So they did. They've been working hard. And this is kind of, from my understanding, Jesus is realizing that, hey, these guys still need to rest. Like, we're still humans and things of that nature. So we have to kind of like rest. So he's trying to give them rest. But there were just so many people around them that they just continued working. They left by boat to a quieter spot. But many people saw them leaving, and people from many towns ran ahead along the shore and met them as they landed. A vast crowd was there as he stepped from the boat, and he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he taught them many things. Late in the afternoon, his disciples came to him and said, "This is a desolate place, and it is getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the nearby farms and villages and buy themselves some food." But Jesus said, "You feed them." "With what?" they asked. "It would take a small fortune to buy the food for all this crowd." "How much food do you have?" he asked. "Go and find out." They came back and reported, "We have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish." Then Jesus told the crowd to sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat in groups of 50 or 100. Jesus took the 5 loaves and 2 fish, looked up toward heaven, asked God's blessing on the food. Breaking the loaves into pieces, he kept giving the bread and fish to the disciples to give to the people. They all ate as much as they wanted, and they picked up 12 baskets of leftover bread and fish. 5,000 men had eaten from those 5 loaves. Okay, so again, here it says 5,000 men, right? If we're doing some sort of calculations, right, especially during the older ages, older times, they usually would just count men. Men were predominantly kind of the counting factor, I guess, in this case. So it's not saying that there was like women and things of that nature, but we would assume that there was also many women that came, many children that came with those 5,000 men. So, presuming that he fed more than just the 5,000. Yes, there was 5,000 men that ate, but also probably many, many women and children. So who knows, 5,000, 7,000 upwards, however many. But incredible miracle that had happened, and they had 12 baskets left over of food afterwards when they only started out with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And you'll see all throughout the scripture, like number 7, whenever there's number 7, there's always some kind of a divine intervention that happens, right? So here they had 7 pieces of food, and then it fed 5,000 men. In the Old Testament, you'll see it all the time. There's things happen in numbers of 7, and some sort of a divine intervention happens. And we'll learn more about those once we dive into the Old Testament. All right, let's continue. Jesus walks on water. Immediately after this, Jesus made his disciples get back into the boat and head out across the lake to Bethsaida, while he sent the people home. Afterwards, he went up into the hills by himself to pray. During the night, the disciples were in their boat out in the middle of the lake, and Jesus was alone on land. He saw that they were in serious trouble, rowing hard and struggling against the wind and waves. About 3 o'clock in the morning, he came to them, walking on the water. He started to go past them, but when they saw him walking on the water, they screamed in terror, thinking he was a ghost. They were all terrified when they saw him, but Jesus spoke to them at once. "It is all right," he said. "I am here. Do not be afraid." Then he climbed into the boat, and the wind stopped. They were astonished at what they saw. They still didn't understand the significance of the miracle of the multiplied loaves, for their hearts were hard, and they did not believe. When they arrived at Gennesaret, I believe that's how you say it, on the other side of the lake, they anchored the boat and climbed out. The people standing there recognized him at once, and they ran throughout the whole area and began carrying sick people to him on mats. Wherever he went, in villages and cities and out in the farms, they laid the sick in the market plazas and streets. The sick begged him to let them at least touch a fringe of his robe, and all who touched it were healed. So we just read in the last chapter, right, about the woman that had the ulcer that was bleeding for the last 12 years of her life, that she touched his fringe, right, and she was healed. So now people are asking him, like, can we at least touch your fringe? And all who did were healed. Anyways, guys, thank you so much. I love you. God bless you and your families, and I hope I see you in chapter 7. Take care.